Please let me know. Can everybody see my presentation? You can just type in yes, or you can put your hand up so that and I know everyone can see my screen. Okay, there we go. We have a few yeses that have come in, so I'm going to proceed. So just the background with this is we obviously want to start a series that look into expanding everyone's knowledge when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to data protection and data privacy. And we can't start on privacy and protection if we haven't touched on cybersecurity, because everything we want to protect is going to be used by either external or internal persons. So in essence, that's basically the background. So you will see a lot more sessions coming up on CPD Sorted that talk to cybersecurity and related areas that are automatically scoped in once we start on the subject. Given how broad it is important that every organization, big or small, takes this forward and makes sure that everybody is trained, everybody understands their role. Now that the advent of Poppy has hit us, Poppy is making it clear that any mistakes will not be tolerated from a financial perspective. So yes, you might be forgiven, which is highly unlikely. You might be forgiven by the public, but the regulator is planning to ensure that at any point in time, you will lose millions if you don't take measures to protect the data that does not belong to you, but that is in your custody. So for us, then before we even jump the gun and start that conversation, we need to start the conversation of cybersecurity. Hence this session. Right. So obviously, when we talk of cybersecurity, we can't talk about it if we're not talking about the internet, because that is what gives everyone access to your life, or what gives you access to other people's lives, other people's information, your banking information, and so on and so on. So the internet gives you access, and you access it via your PC, your mobiles, your personal devices, databases that can be stored on the cloud. I don't know how many of you are operating from the cloud now. Remote servers, which are sometimes located in other jurisdictions, remote desktops. I'm sure you've all been, especially with COVID, TeamViewer has become your friend. Because if IT needs to know what's happening, then you give them your TeamViewer details, they log in remotely so that at least they can access. So this is the advent, this is the new way we've been existing. Not necessarily new, but it has become, it was maybe brought to the forefront, especially with the COVID situation, where we were all forced, or maybe we appreciated it, we were forced to work from home. And with that, we obviously were forced to pay more attention to how we disseminate information. If you recall, when COVID started, a lot of people went on Zoom, and then they got off Zoom again because of cybersecurity issues, if you recall. Teams was also cited. Right now, Microsoft Office is in the papers because there's been a data breach where Microsoft login details for various, and you can imagine how global that is, has been data that belongs to Microsoft customers, you, me, everyone with a Microsoft Office login that they use to access Microsoft Office products, or Microsoft products rather, which includes Windows, has been compromised. So they obviously have a lot of damage control to do should this be proven that this breach has actually happened. And we need to understand, and obviously because I am a stakeholder within Microsoft by use of their products, and by me entering my details, my age, my gender, my credit card details for those of you who are buying it off your credit card because you own your business, or the business payment details, all that can be compromised because it was not secure. So the security aspect here is we're saying, are you secure when you are accessing the cyber world? Whether with your work laptop, with your personal devices, because they all contain your data. They also contain the client's data for those of you that have clients that they service. They contain your employer's data or your business data. And what will happen if that data falls into the wrong hands? That's the question we need to answer. So this is now almost an awareness, introduction to cybersecurity, where we're talking of an awareness, having you understand what you need to look at, what you need to put in place, the awareness you need to have when operating in a cyberspace. Okay. So obviously the internet, when we look at the internet, it consists of millions of private, public, academic, business networks, local, globally, that are linked to various technologies, various operating systems, and so forth. And it obviously carries different kinds of information and resources. For example, the email service we take for granted and we use every day. Right now, we're obviously using chat a lot. File transfers via Dropbox, via cloud services, via business servers, Google Drive, and the like. And file sharing, online gaming. Okay, I'm a gamer myself, PlayStation girl, and right now, PlayStation for a while now has been able to connect online. I play with a few cousins in another geographical jurisdiction there, and we have challenges. I play with random people online. My daughter is addicted to Roblox, and she plays with I don't know who. I've been checking though, I promise. And it is just so much interconnectedness via the internet. Okay. So that's just what, and then obviously every time we access the internet, remember there's a saying now, especially on social media, once you put it out there, you can never get it back. You can never delete it completely. I mean, how many times have we seen tweets from stars and celebrities that are dug up from their non-celeb days or non-celeb times when we didn't know them, when they shared sentiments that were when they didn't know they would be popular. So even though they might go and delete or create a new profile, someone can access that. Someone can go back and using a few algorithms can pull up information that you thought was gone. Even with your laptop, there's certain data where even if you delete it, it can be restored back if you use the right tools. So information gathering techniques that are usually used include website information gathering techniques, email hacking, social engineering, internet banking threats, amongst others. But these are the most prominent ones. And with website gathering techniques, you'll find that, or website information gathering techniques, this is where you're using techniques include what is called footprinting, WHOIS, web archives, which is the Wayback Machine, or just using typical search engines. Sorry. Right. So in essence, if you look at WHOIS, web archive, especially because those two are almost similar. When we look at WHOIS, WHOIS is actually a legitimate database that was created by I'm just forgetting the lady's name, but it's actually a lady in the 70s. And this was a database that collected information around who is Angela or who is W.consulting. So this would include anything that is related to W.consulting would be included and added to that repository. Now you can imagine if someone was to access it illegally, how that might impact an organization. And because it was it was not necessarily governed properly, it meant that a lot of information was accessible to hackers, to people who had nefarious or unscrupulous, and they wanted to use it for unscrupulous means. Right. And then the web archive, this is what is called the Wayback Machine. And what the web archive is more around all entities that set up this archiving process, where websites that have evolved over the years. Remember, if you go to the website for Disneyland in the 70s, for example, this is their website now. I'm sure a lot of changes, a lot of updates. For those of you that have been in an organization where they've been there for years and years, I'm sure a lot of the times you can already see the changes you've made to your website, the web designs, what your websites can do, and so forth. And this, the Wayback Machine was designed to archive all of this as a way to kind of see that transition. But again, it also meant data, including data that was no longer shareable, was now collected, and it's now accessible in one place for hackers and other people who might not have the best of intentions. Right. And then when we look at footprinting, Footprinting is obviously a technique that is used for gathering information about computer systems as well as the entities that they belong to. So a hacker will go into a system and then they will now say, okay, this system belongs to SAP, this system SAP belongs to IBM, for example. So I will now go and find out who else uses the system. And once I get information of how to crack the SAP system, I will now be able to literally hack anyone who uses the SAP system. This is an example. Please don't take it as meaning that the SAP system is not secure. Okay, so in this case, footprinting is like a pre-attack phase. It's like a phase before the actual hacking itself. It's a data collection technique. And then search engines. I think how many times, if you're like me and you're a crime fan, a fan of crime channels or Discovery ID or anything about crime, you'd see that the police go in and when every time they seize a computer, they will go in, they will go to the search history. And like, oh, search history, how to murder using arsenic. Okay, this is now giving away how many times I've watched different crime series. But in essence, what we're saying here is the information you put, certain search engines are not secure. Even Google tells you sometimes you are now venturing into an unsecured website. Do you want to proceed? I'm sure that is something that is popped up once in a while. So if and how what you search for, remember some hackers have little bots running in the background of these search engines, especially the ones that are not very secure. And every time you put in a search criteria, this might indicate to a hacker that you're open for business. And that's how they start tracking you until they get to a point where they can get into your own personal accounts, bank accounts, take all the money, transfer, because they have been following you around on the cyber network. So search engines, what you search for, be careful of what you search for, and you'll see I have a few tips on how to prevent hacking and so forth from in terms of your personal devices. So we'll get into that later. But this is where we use the website information techniques. And then viruses, right? So in essence, you have to remember that hackers have different motives. Some hackers want the data so they can commit fraud. Okay, the basic type of hacker. And then we have some hackers who go in to sabotage you or sabotage the business or sabotage your reputation. Then there are hackers, those are more the ones that we talk about when we refer to terrorist type activity, where they're using cyber warfare, which we will talk about, to go in and deny a service. The service could be a municipal service, right? For example, when the city of Joburg was denied a service when hackers blocked it and no one could access it, including officials there themselves. That was a denial of service, and that actually could be classified as a terrorist activity because it actually disrupts the entire system. Some hack into planes and cause plane crashes because, again, they're trying to make a statement. So it is very important for you to understand some hackers are just malicious, some are just fraudsters who are looking for an opening. Some are trying to make a political or religious or whatever statement. So it becomes important for you to understand that you could be targeted for any of those. You could be targeted because you are South African or you're a South African company. Or you could be targeted because you follow a certain type of religion. Or you could be targeted because of your gender. You could be targeted because of your age. So I just want to emphasize that at this point, you might just get someone who just comes in, deletes everything on your laptop and causes it to crash and then leaves. You ask them why, they'll be like, well, because I can. So computer viruses are a program or pieces of code that are loaded onto your computer and they now start what you wish them to do. Right. So a worm will be something that is, if you hear that I have a worm in my computer, it is a program or an algorithm that actually replicates itself in terms of a network and will now start performing malicious action such as deleting something from a computer or a network's resources. So it could be a worm. I introduce a worm, I connect to the W.consulting network. Next thing, the entire network is brought to its knees, and the source will be my device. And then a Trojan horse is a program that seems to be doing one thing, but then, so your computer will respond as if it's working, but in the background, it's actually might be doing the opposite. Sometimes it might be creating what are called backdoors, and backdoors are ways in which someone, a hacker, an intruder, or even someone internally can delete what they've done because it is not going to be traceable. So a Trojan horse can create a backdoor, and then an intruder can gain access later, and that now obviously will mean we're going to have a big problem. Right. And then obviously we have web scripts, which are programs that are executed from the client or the server side in terms of when you access a multimedia website. So, and then personal information gathering and email hacking, which now comes back to ID, which now we can link to any issues around identity theft. We've got spamming. You must have known, I'm sure you check your spam once in a while if you've lost an email, right? So spamming is when you say when unsolicited messages are sent to someone. For example, and that's why you find for spam anything that is from a random website, and your email now is running. I know my Gmail runs a few algorithms to say you have never, if you open your spam and you open an email in your spam, so you have never received an email from this person. This looks like advertising, which is why it's here. And you can say it gives you an option. It's not spam. If it's not spam, it takes it out and takes it back to your inbox, or you delete it forever. And obviously still your email then will recognize that as spam and will no longer allow it to come into your general inbox. Okay. Now the problem with spam is some of the hackers are using, I'm sure you've seen some, you've won the lottery or urgent, your inheritance, or you've received which is phishing really, but you've received a tax return. Click here. Advertising, click here, and sometimes even though it takes you to the legitimate website, what it does is it can open up a can of worms in terms of you accessing a website that is unsecured, that allows you to import or download programs that have viruses embedded in them. So it's important, for example, if you want to convert a PDF document to Word, maybe you download a converter from the internet. That now might result in you downloading other extras over and above that converter. And then keylogger, also known as a keystroke logger or a system monitor. So what will happen is with some hackers, if I spam, I go onto a website or I use a search engine that is unsecured to search for something, a hacker jumps into my vicinity and is probably shadowing what I'm doing on my laptop. They use a program, and this program can either be installed or it's hardware that is installed in your computer system. And every time I'm typing my password, for example, it logs the keystrokes. So the A key, B key. So if I stress, if my password is ABC123 ! That hacker will now use a program to log my keystroke. So then they will be able to get my username and my password because they are using the keystroke logger. And then that's when you find someone has accessed your banking details or accessed some of the websites where you've saved your credit cards, made purchases, disappeared from the radar. And then phishing. Phishing is an attempt to acquire sensitive information by pretending to be a trustworthy person. So I think all of us have been either been victims already of phishing, or else they have, they have seen it in your emails. I think the most common one is the 401, what are they called again? The Nigerian scams where you've inherited money from an uncle who's died in the Seychelles, and They just need you to pay something. Or it has just come on your phone, you've won a hamper. Now when you call this number, you call the number and you're told, oh, yes, you've won, you just need to deposit 200 to access 500,000, which seems funny. But a lot of people have fallen for that trick because obviously scammers win because they always prey on some people who might be desperate. Okay, so fishing comes from the word fish, which is actually to go to a river with your fishing rod and fish. So there, when you're fishing, we're just saying someone is just hoping someone will take the bait. And once you take the bait, that's how they now access your user information. So I've had people who are scammed or lured into websites where they enter. I don't know. I think the newest one these days that I keep finding in my personal email is the government ones from government departments. And I'm finding that a lot in my Gmail. And it's funny because I guess if I was desperate, I would say, oh, wow, government wants me to submit a quote. But the first question would be, why would they send government? Would they accept someone with a Gmail account? Would they send it informally like this? And right now I noticed the other day that they even now put in the logos and now phone numbers and so forth. So it's obviously different types of phishing in a way in trying to lure me into either pressing a button that says press. If you click here, it takes you to an unsecure website where your information can be stored, or else you've let them into your network and they can now start using other ways to get your information. And then secret questions is a security measure, obviously, that is used. I'm sure you've seen at least pick 3 secret questions. Where were you born? The idea being you pick more difficult questions that are not easily guessed. So that even if someone gets your password, if the login, right now a lot of systems are designed in such a way that if someone logs in from a different area or a different IP address from the norm or the normal, the system will actually send you a notification or else ask you as an additional security requirement to enter the responses to the secret questions. And that becomes a way in which to stop the personal information gathering and hacking, because normally when you are logging in, you don't answer secret questions every single time. And then social engineering is obviously a non-technical method of intrusion where that hackers use that rely heavily on obviously human interaction and involves tricking people into breaking normal security procedures. Right. And this includes your phishing, baiting, pretexting, quid pro quo. So I'm just trying to think of a very good example. I've already spoken to phishing, baiting, but think about how many of you maybe might have fallen the victim to someone who sends an email with your supplier details, because some of these hackers will pick up from your emails that you get emails from ABC Limited quite a lot. And then the next thing, they send you an email, but they might change. Instead of .coza, it might be angela.makowe@abclimited.com. But the normal address is .coza. And when you see it, it never occurs to you that it's the different email. They'll be like, oh, hi, Kanye, this is whoever. Just wanted to notify you of our change in banking details. Please may you effect this with immediate effect for the next payments. And what does Angela do? Angela goes in, looks at the email. It looks legitimate. Go in, send the instruction to the creditor's clerk. They change everything. Next time a payment is made, you send POP and they tell you, no, this is not our account details. You send them and they tell you, no, this is not our email. And that's when you realize, oh, I've just fallen into a trap. So the human interaction becomes very important. And remember, some very good hackers, scammers, fraudsters, very good at creating rapport. Right. So now that we've got some of the terms out of the way, and when we talk about them, you will obviously understand what I'm referring referring to. The first thing you have to remember is you now need to consider what are we talking about when we are talking about cybersecurity. Okay, I'm just gonna move this for your benefit. Apologies for that. I hope everybody can still see my slides. Please let me know if you can't see the slides. Thank you. Right. So, personal data. The first things first, the thing you have to understand about cybersecurity is you need to start with you. You have to get the knowledge, and then it starts with you. The risks you take personally are the risks you probably will take with company data, with client data. Are you protected as an individual first? So if we look at the definition of cybersecurity, it is the protection of a network system and data from unauthorized use or harm. What this means is this harm can be both internal and external. I hope that's clear. It can be both internal, where someone from another department or another section of the company has accessed data that they shouldn't, have accessed modules within a system that they shouldn't. Okay. So you obviously have to understand that you have an online and an offline identity. Okay. That is the identity. Your offline identity is you. How you interact at home when you walk in. You're not a bot, obviously. When you walk into work, when you walk in at home, when you walk in, for those of you studying at school and so forth. Right. Then there's your online identity, which is your digital identity when you're in cyberspace, when you've logged onto the internet. So in this online, obviously with both offline and online, the idea is to obviously try not to reveal too much than necessary. But it takes a bigger picture aspect when we look at it from an online perspective. Because here we are saying you need to only reveal a limited amount of information about yourself. So if, for example, I find it funny when I Google myself, I do it often. It's not vanity, I promise. It's just to keep track of what comes up. And why I do that, I'll tell you a little story. It's because in 2011, when I was really getting onto social media, I was on Facebook, I was sharing, I had status updates every hour. At the time there was no check-in button, but I was telling everyone where I'm going, what I'm doing, what hairstyle, what I paid for. Only stopped short of maybe sharing my salary details or my banking details, but I was sharing quite a lot. I mean, most of you must remember the time when you maybe went onto social media for the first time. And I remember I got a call from a very old friend, and Angela, how's it going? Great. It's like, have you Googled yourself lately? And I was like, no, not really. She's like, I think you should. And then I Googled myself, and the most horrific information came out. So clearly, I seem to have, gotten myself a stalker. And this person went on to create multiple identities or multiple profiles of me, although they were not me, online. And the worst part was they made it seem as if I was a prostitute. So on LinkedIn, I was a professional prostitute looking for clients. And the funny thing was, because any other time I would have said, oh, well, someone is just playing a cruel prank. They had all the information, my date of birth, all the areas I'd worked. It was listed in proper chronological order. And it was just, and obviously the additives were just that prostitution aspect, which I obviously haven't done. So now it was like, what? I had to go to the police because when I approached LinkedIn wanted a police report. I had to go to the police to get that. I had to approach Facebook, and then I needed to submit email after email to prove that this is not me. I wanted the IP address, but unfortunately, the police could not do much with it at the time. I don't even know what it was. But I remember wanting to get information about where are these people when they log in to update these fake profiles. And I think I was quite traumatized. I won't lie, it was very traumatizing. I was younger in those days. And they would take pictures that I put up on Facebook and use them as profile pic. Basically, when I change my picture, they'll just download the same pic and save it to other profiles that they had that were fake of me. So you can imagine it was me. It looked like me. The profile sounded like me. The only difference was the malicious content that was in me. And it was very traumatizing. And that's when I realized I actually need to be careful of what I'm sharing out there. Because not everyone looks at it as oh, Angela just shared, let's all like this. Some people have taken screenshots with the age or the advent of phones that take screenshots. Some have downloaded images that you've put up of your children, of your house, of when you check in to the spa that is literally down the road from you, telling us where you live. When you check in at the airport, telling us that you've left your house and you're not there, so I can come and see what's in your house and maybe take what I like. You know, telling us you've bought a new car, allowing someone to hack into your car and access where you go. It's a lot of things, and it can be scary when you look at the bad side. And the idea is this is for your convenience, but it's not supposed to make it easy for other people to access that convenience. So when you're using usernames or alias alias, you need to obviously not include any personal information. Keep it appropriate and respectful. I know a few people whose passwords are unmentionable. Okay, do not attract unwanted attention. Rich Girl 101. The Great Traveler, or there's this funny titles that we might sometimes give ourselves as a way for self-affirmation, which might obviously end up either giving people the wrong idea if maybe you're not a rich girl, or the right idea and therefore make you a target if indeed you are a rich girl. So your online identity is tied to your personal being. Now I know it's great. It's been a very good way of catching up, and I still use Facebook, by the way. I still use LinkedIn, but now I use it with a modicum of respect. I try to keep my distance from it, not to share. I do share sometimes personal details because yes, my relatives are there, a few friends have moved away, which is good. I keep them updated about how my life is. But as much as possible, it is important to try and avoid oversharing in terms of your online identity. Oh, I'm moving banks. I hate this bank. I'll move to FNB. ABC Bank is horrible. So all of that. Oh, thank God I opened a new account. Sorry for to sound blasphemous there. And I'm now with guys. Well, I'm now with Netbank. Making those kind of announcements is what will sometimes put you at risk. So your data, obviously, we're looking at data on all your computing devices. So data on your laptop right now, data on your personal server, for those of you that might have home or personal servers at home. Then we've got your medical data. I'm with Discovery and I've got the app on my phone. So I can access all my bills. I can access what I'm owing. I can load a prescription. I can load claims and the like. So all my medical data is there, the blood type. So if someone takes my phone while I'm sleeping, logs in with my thumbprint, and I've made everything that needs login to be to read my biometrics rather, then they literally can just cut off my thumb, they'll literally access even my bank accounts, right? Okay, so don't come looking for me to cut off my thumb. I'll change that from today. But in essence, that your medical data is a touch away. Okay, employment data. My husband was saying to me that day, oh, we need to update our Drive documents because we save everything on the cloud. So our policies, so that if anything, if I need to access a child's birth certificate, it's on the Drive. Now imagine if that Drive becomes compromised. Someone will have access to my policies, my children's documents, my employment contracts, any pension details in terms of pension funds. All of it will be stored in there. Information online. I've already given examples of that. What are you sharing about yourself online? started a new job, loving it. New job, new things, new salary. The hello, Mercedes-Benz. Your identity, your facial profile, your physical profile. You are putting, as soon as you put your pictures out there, we now know what Angela looks like. We can say this is Angela's identity. Right now, your phone has your prints, your fingerprints even. Okay, education data, financial data. All of that is considered as part of your personal data. So every time I speak to personal data that belongs to you, I'm talking about all that. Financial, education, identity, your ID, information that you've put online, employment details, your medical details. Right. So if we further, this is just a further breakdown of what I was mentioning to you to say, if we talk of medical records, your electronic health records, physical, mental, and other personal information. Right now, you will see, for those of you that are maybe on Discovery, I noticed every time I go to the doctor, they send me a permission message to say, Dr. So-and-so wants to access your medical history or your medical records. Meaning, every time I say yes, I'm giving consent to that doctor to access because it's my data. So even though it's stored with Discovery, Discovery has to ask me if I want a third party to access my data. Because it's mine, it's my medical history, and they have a confidentiality clause that they signed or that they offered me when I joined. Meaning that they cannot release that data to a third party without my knowledge and my consent. And in education records, we're looking examples include your grades, any test scores, the courses that you have taken, awards and degrees that have been awarded to you, your attendance, any disciplinary reports or disciplinary issues that have come up from an educational point of view. Same applies to employment, your income and expenditures, whether it's via your bank statements, your tax records, are you up to date? Your IRP 5 lists your tax identity, past employment, past performance when you were in those employment jobs or in those entities. And then where is your data? That's the question you want to start answering from today. Now that you know what is your personal data, what we mean when we talk about that very same personal data, the next question we want you to answer is, where is it? And are you happy about where it is? Have you asked them who else accesses this data? You have the right to call your bank and say, delete certain types of data, do not share my data with third parties, and so on and so on. I've seen it as a common mistake. A lot of people who get loans, whether it's car loans or home loans, because of the excitement, they end up saying, yes, do you want Standard Bank to contact you with regards to its products or services? Yes. Do you want Standard Bank to give your details to a third party so they can contact you about their products and their services? Yes, because at that point in time, you're just happy they said yes to your loan application. But it's very important for you to understand that these lists are distributed broadly. So your data, which is your name, your surname, probably your ID number, your gender, right? Your religious affiliation, if possible, everything that you have shared with Standard Bank at that point, and please note I'm using it as an example, will be shared to that third party because you ticked yes and you gave consent. So now it becomes a question of how many people have your details and your ID number and can access, and your tax number, and so on and so on. So obviously medical records could be with the doctor, insurance company, which is the Discovery example I've given you now. Excuse me. Store loyalty cards. No, I think half my wallet is just store loyalty cards. And you'll find that especially in the United States, they have started running algorithm where if, for example, I know, for example, when they used information system algorithms I think it was Target, where a father found out his daughter was pregnant because of her purchasing patterns. So the info system picked up that a combination of this vitamin, that supplement would indicate that someone is pregnant. And therefore, their marketing began to target the owner, the loyalty card owner, which was the father, for baby bibs, baby formula, baby items, just baby anything. And that's how he picked up that, oh, my daughter who usually uses this store card, or the only one who uses the store card, is clearly pregnant. Now imagine, this is what your data is telling someone. It's telling a whole supermarket that Angela is pregnant now. So when you send her ads, or when you have ads popping up when she browses the internet, make the ads about babies. Because she looked, even now, if you look at it, some of you have been on Google. I know if I Google vitamin C, if I Google zinc, the next thing is I'm going to see a lot of ads around oxygen boosters, around a lot of pop-up ads become health-based, especially around the COVID situation. If you Google headboard, again, already even on your Facebook pages, the ads that come up are now focused on your current needs based on your current search. So this is every time you enter, and it links it to your personal data now. So you can imagine what your footprint looks like. So with store loyalty cards, the stores will compile your purchases. A marketing partner, if they have ticked yes, they can share. They can then use this to target, to use the profiles for their target ads. Online pictures. I've already told you about my experience, my personal experience, where someone was creating profiles using my pictures, not cropped pictures, because now I can go on Facebook and download an image from someone's profile. I can take a screenshot and crop it out and make it seem as if I got it legitimately. So every time you share your pictures, your friends will have it. Strangers may also have a copy. And they might use this. A lot of strangers have had photos of someone, like my photo could be used for phishing purposes. Remember, we spoke about phishing? So someone is saying, oh, I'm looking for a partner. I'm Angela. This is my face. This is how I look like. They send a picture of me. And then that person maybe decides, oh, I like Angela. Let me send the money for her to come and visit. In the next thing, they are now looking for Angela, but the picture they're using is not Angela. It is the scammer. So obviously that opens up a can of worms. Right, and then your computer devices, so the data that you're storing on your laptops, on your desktops, on your tablets, and what you use when it comes to accessing your online data. Right. So obviously I would have asked you guys examples of some of the devices you use for computing purposes. I'm sure you guys will say a tablet. Some of you use tablets. You use cell phones, laptops, desktops, PlayStation, game consoles, because they also can access or be used as a computing device. So you need to have an understanding of what data is stored within the various devices. How do you back it up? Because the backup becomes important as well. And then where is it backed up? Is it a secure area? So if you back up your WhatsApp messages to your Google Drive, for example, you have to make sure that your Google Drive is also going to be safe. Otherwise, those backed up conversations can be accessed by unauthorized persons. Right. So now when we look at personal data as a target, you are giving to answer the question, how do the criminals get your money? How do the criminals get your information? Why do they want your identity? Because those are the two questions. Identity theft is big. And how? Through your online credentials, through creative schemes that allow you to either trick you into sending them money, or sending them money for friends or family, or getting your family to send them money using you as bait. This happened a lot with WhatsApp. I think it was 2 years ago, where hackers were hacking into cell phones, hacking WhatsApp, and then sending WhatsApp messages to your contacts to say, "Hi, it's Angela. This is so urgent. I'm so sorry. You know I never do this. Please, can you send me an e-wallet of 200 to this number?" They send the number, and obviously your worried friends or worried relatives might immediately send the money. They withdraw, nowhere to be found, only to realize the phones have been hacked. So you'll see now it was encouraged. I remember on radio, they're like, guys, if you get someone saying, "I'm in a fix, please send money," or "please come here," just call them still. Call them and say, because remember, if they might not, if they have a cloned SIM card, then they'll either not pick up, or they'll pick up as themselves, or else your friend or your relative will pick up and you can confirm whether or not they indeed sent that message. So how do they get your money? They can mimic your online credentials, where you have given thieves access to your accounts, or they can use the creative schemes as mentioned. And now the next question is why? Why would they want your identity? I've had people whose identities have been stolen, and these criminals went and got a loan. An entire loan, guys. An entire loan. Either to buy a vehicle or just a personal loan, and they disappeared from the radar. So now you're stuck with, and the burden of proof lies with you, the person who's had their identity stolen. So the bank will say, "Oh, okay, it wasn't you, prove it." So the burden of proof will be on you, because either you catch the criminal or you prove that you took precautions. And right now, banks are starting, I see a lot of banks are starting to send a lot of training on cybersecurity and keeping your account secure, because they're saying once you agree that you've seen this, then they will not be liable for losses that you suffer for not taking the appropriate measures. Okay, so your identity can be used in numerous ways. Getting long-term profits like a loan, medical benefits. There's a lot of medical insurance fraud where someone goes and poses as Angela at the hospital, they get treatment, and then I see something coming off like, "No, I wasn't at Netcare for 3 days." I call Discovery and like, "No, no, no. Someone came in, and Angela came in and we treated Angela 3 days ago." Filing fake tax returns in order maybe to maximize on getting a tax refund. Opening of credit card accounts and spending on those credit cards, obtaining loans, which I've talked about. Right. I'm going to take a 15-minute break. It is 1:20. Let's come back, and then when we come back, we'll speak to organizational data. So I think on my watch it's 20 past. So you guys will be back at 1:25. So we're gonna just take a break, and in that break, we're just gonna grab your coffee, your tea, and then we'll resume at 1:35. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry, let me just make sure I can just mute the background noise. Sorry about that, everyone. I unfortunately have a daughter that's not well, but I do have someone who's giving care. So my apologies for that. So remember before we took a break, we had focused on personal data and how personal data ends up becoming a target. So now the next part is the organizational data. So remember, it starts with you, and then from there, we can then, I'm just gonna make sure my connection is fine. Okay, because now, sorry about that. Sorry guys, I think I'm having a bit of a glitch there. Just gonna add back my slides. Okay, there we go. There we go. I think we're up and running. Perfect. Okay, I hope everybody can see my slides. If you can't, please let me know on the chat so that I can address it. Right, so the types of organization, so I was saying the personal data, it starts with you, and then the next part is obviously to make sure that once you have your data tied down, your device is tied down or secure, then only then do we now then go ahead and say what is the types of organizational data that you have access to, and what are our responsibilities when it comes to that, the said organizational data. So obviously when we look at data, there's 3 criteria to data. Data is considered, has to be available. So for data to be useful, it has to be available. For data to be useful, it has to be kept confidential, where no one can access any type of data. It has to be accessed by those that are authorized to access that data or have the permissions to do so. The data has to have integrity. So what that means is the data has to be usable. It has to be coming from a secure place. It has to be coming from actual information or actual events that have happened. The data has to be reliable. So integrity talks to, is the data representative of what it stands for? So the types of organizational data we have would include the traditional data, which talks to personnel, intellectual data, like what we own as an organization's patents, trademarks, product plans, trade secrets, plant design, and the like. Personnel, we're looking at application materials, the payroll function, offer letters that we offer to employees, employee agreements or contracts. Okay, and then financial data is your income statements, balance sheets, cash flow statements, source documentation used to ensure that those the annual financial statements are supported by actual transactions and balances that have occurred and exist. And then we've got data which is derived from the Internet of Things and what we call big data. So Internet of Things, we're talking about IO, which is IoT. This is a large network of physical objects such as sensors, as well as data that we obtain from the IoT. Now, big data, right? Maybe to put it into context, IoT, we're saying if you have various devices, various web-based applications that you use, all of those, that is what we call the Internet of Things. Then from there, we've got big data, which is all this data we are collecting from the various devices, various software programs, various web-based applications, everything that we use to connect to the internet within the organization. That's what we are calling big data. And because, remember, once information is on the internet, even from a POPI perspective, it's considered available and usable because it's there. It's not protected. So if you put your age on the internet, you can't say you have no right to use my age because you put it on there. So you gave access to it. So when we talk big data is always going to be what we refer to as a collection of everything. Everything that we have that is derived from that Internet of Things. Right. So these are large data sets, okay, which we can analyze to reveal things like patterns or whatever. So if, for example, Facebook is collecting, every time you put a status update, the hashtags, let's use hashtags as an example. That's one of the one ways in which big data can be utilized, where a hashtag will kind of, if you put a hashtag in, it will bring up anything that was tagged to that particular topic, including people's sentiments. So hashtag Black Friday, you can have people tweeting, oh, I'm not going to be leaving, I'm only going to be buying online. So you take a lot, will sit up and say, based on this big data that we've collected from prowling the Internet of Things and so forth, we've picked up that no one in this COVID situations wants to go and queue up for Black Friday. So what we need to do is we need to make sure we bulk up on the website. We need to make sure the website does not crash, because we probably will have twice as many users on Black Friday looking for deals. So this is the organizational data that has become more apparent to a lot of organizations that have jumped onto the technology bandwagon. And then confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Right. This is what I was saying earlier, that confidentiality speaks to privacy. Only authorized people should have access to that data. Integrity, accuracy, and how trustworthy is it? Right? Availability. Can we access it? Can we use it? And in this instance, when we talk of that 3 criteria for data, it has to be authorized. The assumption is it's authorized. You can't, if it's not authorized, then that's already a breach. Okay. So the impact of a security breach. Now, let me give you a few examples. I think I just want to talk about this. Let me talk about the British Airways. Do you guys remember the British Airways security breach that happened? It was about 2 years ago. I don't know. Hands up for those that remember it. Okay, I just want to pull up the Microsoft security breach. The 2021 security breach. Right. So on the 7th of March, right, hackers breached Microsoft. And then now, so a sophisticated attack on Microsoft Corporation widely used business email software is morphing into a global cybersecurity crisis, as hackers race to infect as many victims as possible before companies can secure their computer systems. So the attack, which Microsoft has said started with the Chinese government backing hacking group, has so far claimed at least 60,000 known victims globally. Many of them appear to be small and medium-sized businesses caught in a wide net the attackers cast as Microsoft worked to shut down the hack. Okay. So the European Banking Authority said access to personal data through emails held on the Microsoft server may have been compromised. Others identified include banks, electricity providers, senior citizen homes, ice cream company, Maryland-based firm that monitors the security of customers, and their experts in a cybersecurity company said its experts alone were working with at least 50 victims, trying to quickly determine what data the hackers may have taken while also trying to eject them. So this is what happened. This is from the 7th of March. And you cannot look at it as, oh, it does not affect us, because we use Microsoft products. We use Outlook. So already, if anything, the first thing you need to do when you go back as part of this training is, can you find out the impact of the Outlook hack on your business? Because obviously they will target, the first ones are always the low-hanging fruit, is small to medium-sized enterprises, because we don't invest as much in cybersecurity. We think that's for the banks, that's for, the big guns. But you have access to a lot of data as a small business, or even if you're a big business, I don't even have to. I should be preaching to the converted. And if you're not sure, then I'll put in a marketing hack there to say this is maybe when you need to now speak to the security professionals at W.consulting to provide or make an assessment of your vulnerability to that attack. But this is literally, and I remember seeing this as we were looking at the content and thinking, by the time I sent out the content, it didn't yet happened, but it was something I meant to actually talk about and eradicate the security breaches I could have talked about. British Airways was fined millions of rand when they had the security breach, which compromised customer credit cards. if you recall, it was in 20, goodness, let me try and remember the year. I think it was in 2020 or 2019. They were fined £20 million for 2018 data breach. £20 million. And right now, the POPI regulator, the Protection of Personal Information regulator, is proposing similar type of penalties for any companies that expose people's personal data as penalties or fines for those breaches. So the consequences, obviously, of a security breach is it's not feasible. We don't expect you to prevent an attack. But even with POPI, you'll see, with POPI, they're saying, look, you need to tell us what you put in place. So even though a breach might happen, we just need to make sure that you took all necessary precautions to prevent it. Hackers are known to be always one step. The moment a new software is designed, they find a new way to break into it. So that's why technology is fast moving, because every day someone wakes up with a new way of breaking into the newest technology. So the consequences, it's not feasible. We don't expect it to be feasible to be in a preventative, but you should either be in a detective or corrective position when it comes to data breaches or a security breach. Attackers, like I said, new ways of doing things. So you have a ruined reputation, vandalism, right? Theft, revenue that's lost through loss of trust, loss of customers. If you have a denial of service type of security breach where people are denied a service. A security breach, I think with one of the banks, there were double debits at some point. And what did people do? About 15% of people moved from that bank to another bank. That's loss of revenue, loss of customers. Damaged intellectual property, patents, formulas altered, programming logic deleted, scientific formula, scientific equations deleted, and backups deleted in such that it becomes difficult to recreate it again and again. So it's a lot more to lose if we take the high road with this and say, no, I'm not interested. I think we're safe. No one attacks businesses my size, or they're not really interested in that. They want the big guys, the big guns. Okay. So examples of security breach would be stolen email addresses, and then prevention would be maybe you need to email verification, where if someone logs in, a verification PIN or OTP, one-time PIN, comes in via messaging, via your number, via your email. Unfortunately, if they clone, that means they'll also get it the same time you get it. But the idea is the more you put in two-factor authentication, in terms of your login details, whether it's at work or whatever, and just make sure that you ensure a shutdown where an unknown device or an unknown IP address is used to log in. The use of complex passwords that are where you are prompted to change it maybe every 2 to 3 months. I know it's a bore, and sometimes we end up writing down the passwords on a piece of paper. But the idea is to keep someone, so even if they use a keystroke logger, once they get the password, they'll then see when they enter it that you've already changed passwords and you've moved on to another type of password. I recently was in a phishing in my Gmail. I got a spam email where, hi Angela, this is whoever. It was an extortion email. I bet you're wondering how come it's only you. I promise you probably have them. You might not have noticed them. But it was an extortion email. And in that email, this person said, hi, Angela, this is so and so. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay me $5,000 click on this link via Bitcoin. And no, I think it was $1,000. And then I won't release, I think the extortion was, I will make it same as if you were logging onto porn sites, because your laptop has web access. So they have a proper description. Because your laptop has a webcam, I will make it seem as if you were logging onto porn sites or adult sites and record I have already recorded you talking or doing something using your webcam. So basically what they were saying in their email is they will make it seem as if my facial reactions from that webcam recording are coming from an adult site, and they will release it to embarrass me, as well as obviously to upset my employers that's what I'm doing, with timestamps and everything. So obviously they're implying they might do it during working hours to imply that I was doing this during working hours. And then from there they said, if you think I'm lying, is one of your passwords? And they actually gave me an extract of my password, the real thing. And I obviously panicked because I was like, what? So then that means they are serious. They actually did hack into my webcam on my laptop and were able to record me either talking or training like this or whatever the case might be. And they are now going to, I wish I had saved it because I just deleted it forever. It was in my spam. I would have shown it to you guys as a display item. But in essence, it got me thinking because I then Googled that to say, I wonder how people, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's received this. I remember everyone like reading a few pages to say, please don't fall for it. There is nothing like that. It cannot be done and so forth. There's so many explanations. And I waited it out. I think it was about a month or two ago. I haven't seen anything since. I changed my passwords, which used that same password. I ended up going everywhere to change that because clearly they probably used the keystroke logger to pick up the first few details of my password, which means I might have been hacked for sure. And so this person was tracking my keystrokes, as I mentioned earlier, and they managed to derive what my password is, or at least the beginnings of my password. And then from there, the rest is easy because it's obviously or seems authentic that they can do it given the fact that they've already indicated they've seen my password. And it's so funny how if you go, it's not funny, haha, but funny as in said funny. When you go and you Google this particular issue, a lot of people have fallen victim and they've actually paid because they were scared. Okay, so phishing attacks, very, very scary because they seem real. There's the silly ones like, oh, you've inherited this from a great uncle. Oh, I inherited this. Can I put money in your account and then you can then give it to me? Those ones are the most silly ones, which we can say, it won't happen to me. But you'd be very surprised how many people have been caught out in the other type of phishing attacks. So if you look at the security breach example, I was speaking to you about British Airways. Then we have the VTech case, the VTech Toys case. Sorry, I'm just getting a notification that my connection is not well. I'm just fixing or changing my connection to another connection. Right. But the VTech is a high-tech toy maker for children. And what happened with VTech was there was a data breach in 2015. And while investigating the breach, the FTC, which is the investigating body in the United States, found that the firm had broken laws governing the way data about children is gathered. So what that breach did, for example, it exposed sensitive information, customer names, email addresses, passwords, pictures, chat logs, right? And it was found that they did not safeguard the information correctly. And the app that was used by VTech collected personal information, but it did not actually get consent from parents or and it did not tell the children that the data that was being collected was being collected in the usage of that data. So what it meant was a security person or a researcher could get at the firm's network and then take that personal information as well as email addresses and use it for whatever research they might do or for other malicious purposes. And the unfortunate thing was VTech was unable, they did not even know that they had been breached until they were actually contacted by a journalist. And remember, we are buying this for our children. Why I brought up VTech is because we buy, what are those things called? Drones. We buy gaming consoles. We buy handheld gaming consoles. We buy tablets. So we've got a lot of toys that can be connected on via Wi-Fi. And these toys are taking or collecting information. Some of these toys allow a child, like for example, PlayStation allows you to mount a webcam that allows you to have a video connection with other players. So you can imagine how many other toys are there that allow that connection as long as there's a webcam connection. So your child's picture has probably been taken or a video and they are under the age of consent without your consent, and that obviously creates a breach from a breach that is obviously worrisome. And remember with VTech, 650,000 US dollars. That amounts to, multiply that by 15, that amounts to about 90. Yep. 90 million. Am I right? I think, yeah. I'm right. No, 9 million. 9 to 10 million. And that's what POP is gunning for, a minimum of 10 million for any data breaches. If it's proven that you were negligent, because you're not going to be fined for having a security breach. No, no, no. You will be fined for not putting in appropriate measures to avoid or at least reduce the impact of the breach. And then we've got Equifax. Right. In 2017, attackers filtrated hundreds of customer records from Equifax, which is a credit reporting agency. Right? And basically what happened was Equifax assesses the financial health of nearly everyone in that country. And there was a hack, and it was initially hacked via a consumer complaint web portal. So with that customer complaint web portal, because remember, if you go to any website for those big companies, for example, some of them have a portal where you can log a customer complaint. It's linked to your email where you enter your email address, and then in your email you might even get a reference number to say, oh, you've logged a complaint, someone will get back to you. So that's what the hackers did. They went there, they used that portal to jump in, and because certain updates had not been run on that particular portal, it meant that there was a vulnerability that Equifax had not picked up. And when the attackers were in that particular web portal, they were able to move to other servers, right? Because the systems in themselves were not segmented from one another. So they were able to find usernames and passwords that were stored in plain text, and they allowed them to access further into other aspects of the system. So this is where now internally, if you all use the same username and password, because I mean, we all know each other here, but someone can come and as they access the back systems, they will now pick up that universal username, which will give them further access to other systems within your network. And that's how one breach can end up not even stopping at just the first breach, but it can end up becoming a snowball effect. And then what the attackers did, they went on to pull data from the network in encrypted form, and Equifax was none the wiser about it. Did not absolutely pick it up for months, as they did not renew an encryption certificate on one of their internal security tools. And the worst thing was they obviously did not report this for a whole month. And obviously that created a lot of distrust because Equifax is listed. So obviously something like a security breach on a listed company will result in share price dropping. So over and above that, it was unethical for them to not highlight that and say, we've been breached and this is what we're doing to fix it. So all of this is information that is available. If you're interested, I'll send you the links on the chat to where you can read up on this. But it ends up being very interesting as to how one small breach, one small oversight from an organizational perspective can dig a deep trench, which is very difficult to get out of. Right, so now if we look at the profile of a cyber attacker and the types of attackers, so we've got your amateurs. They're starting out, they script kiddies with little or no skill. They use existing tools that you can find online because yes, the hackers, it's a big business, the hacking business. So here we're talking about people, I'm sure some of you have even tried it. Someone's like, oh, I want to hack my husband's WhatsApp, or I want to hack my mom's WhatsApp to see what she's been up to and all of that. So this is the small time type of hacking we're talking about. And then when we look at the different types of hackers now who break into computers or network to gain unauthorized access, we've got your white hats. Okay, your white hats we like them because they break into the system with permission. So a lot of, and this is some of the tests we do, we call them vulnerability tests or ethical hacking. So if you look up the terms ethical hacking. So with the vulnerability test, we go in and we start trying to break down a system to see how resilient it is. So a white hat is basically going to break into a system with permission, but almost as if they're a stranger, in order to identify weaknesses and then create a report which is sent to their client to say we gained access, or they can say we didn't manage to gain access, however these are the vulnerability. So we call those vulnerability assessments, and we do that with some of our clients where they'll invite us to come and look at that to say, Angela and team, can you come in and can you break into the system and see how far you will go? Then you can test preventative measures or controls. You can test detective, where even though your preventative tried, I still got in. How can you now detect that, Angela? Because remember, with Equifax, they got information for months without being detected. So that means that a detective internal control, unfortunately, was not working. Then also there's the part of, is there any way for us to correct it? So maybe I failed to prevent, I failed to detect, but at least once I know, is there a way to correct? Unfortunately, with data breaches, it becomes a big problem because it becomes difficult to be in a position where you can correct that. Right. Gray hats, they compromise systems without permission. Okay. So in this instance, so I'm just going to have a drink of water. Just have a bit of a little thing stuck in my throat there. Excuse me. So a gray hat is a hacker who can violate laws or typical but does not have malicious intent. So the difference between gray and black is gray is you don't have permission, you are not considered an ethical hacker. But sometimes these are the typical hackers that might do it to make a statement. For example, I know the one, I think when they tried to censor the social media in Zimbabwe, I think it was about 2 years ago, they told all the telecoms to basically disallow use of Facebook and WhatsApp because they said, well, messages around uprisings are being spread on WhatsApp and Facebook platforms, so we need to shut it down. And a group of hackers, I don't know from where, went and they restored functionality. Now, we can't call them white hats because even though we can say, oh, it was a good cause, it was still illegal. because they did not get permission to break into those systems and restore them. So typical grey hats have similar attributes where they are not there to be malicious. They might be there to make a statement, to make a point, usually political or religious, but they don't want to cause any harm. And then, of course, black hats are the black sheep, right? They take advantage of any vulnerability for illegal, personal, financial, or political gain. Right. And then we've got your organized hackers, which are organizations of cyber criminals, hacktivists, terrorists, state-sponsored hackers. State-sponsored hackers were now getting into more of your cyber warfare, terrorists again, cyber warfare, where we've seen, I think right now there was a breach in Iran, in the Iran nuclear program. And obviously, if you follow the news, there's allegations that the United States found the information and personal data for whoever is heading it up and obviously executed that person. This is alleged. But this is how data breaches are being used for political gain, for wars, for cyber warfare, for states. That's the state-sponsored hackers that are going in there. You see China being accused. You saw what happened with Trump and the election in 2016 with Russia being implicated. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about organized hackers. The Sony hacking from North Korea, where they were going to release the movie, I think it was The Dictator. That movie was never released, again, because Sony was hacked and shut down by alleged Korean hackers. And what it meant was they lost revenue from that movie because it never happened, or it never aired. They had to pull out, otherwise they were basically held at ransom through a hacking or a data breach. So profiles of the profile of a cyber hacker can be from an internal and external perspective. So the threats are both internal and external. I always try to emphasize that please don't assume that everyone is loyal to you. And by that, I'm not saying people are disloyal. Sometimes people won't even know they are not being loyal. If they don't change a password or they keep repeating a password because they don't want to forget. That already is vulnerabilities that might be created without someone knowing, which is why it's important for this training to be taken forward to every staff member who has access to your Internet of Things. Right. So internal security threats, we're talking about employees and ex-employees, directors, ex-directors, anyone connected to the entity, whether in the current state or past. Right? Contract staff, because contract staff know they're there for a very short period of time. It is easy to compromise controls during that short period of time. Trusted partners. A lot of the times, fraud that is perpetrated in organizations is always done by a trusted employee 80% of the time. Imagine that 80% of the time, an employee who's given all the keys, the employee who has super user access to the system, the employee who is always up to date with updates, making sure that the organization is updated. Usually the inside threats or the trusted partners or anyone who perpetrates any sort of cyber fraud or the like is always going to be the person who understands the system the best, because now they understand how to circumvent it. Okay, so how they can mishandle confidential data, they can threaten the operations of the network by intentionally deleting or planting a worm or planting a virus, right, or a Trojan horse, facilitate outside attacks by connecting infected devices to the systems, accidentally invite malware through malicious email or accessing websites, which is why it's important to educate your employees around accessing unverified websites or websites that have security weaknesses. I know some of my clients already block certain websites to avoid any issues. I think in my previous role, Gmail was blocked because of the high amount of malware that people were getting via their Gmail accounts. So they were clicking on malware, which downloaded onto the laptop and then created worms and viruses that replicated and ended up invading some of the networks. Right. And then with the external security threats we've talked about. So they are exploiting vulnerabilities in the network or devices, and they're using social engineering to gain access. And if you recall, we've spoken about social engineering right at the beginning. Okay. And then I spoke briefly about cyber warfare, and this is when we have conflict, where we have conflict using cyberspace. So in this case, I'll take you back to the Iran's nuclear issue, right? The Stuxnet is an extremely sophisticated computer worm that exploits multiple previously unknown Windows 0-day vulnerabilities to infect computers and spread spread the infection to the network, right? And if you look at the Stuxnet saga, in line with what happened in Iran as an example, I like to use, please note that this is not, I'm apolitical in this sense. This is just examples we're using. So you can just have, it's very interesting because it helps you get a better understanding of how this can be utilized, how cybersecurity and cyber warfare has been weaponized in terms of wars between nations. Okay, so what happened is this worm went ahead and destroyed numerous centrifuges in Iran's uranium enrichment facility, and it caused them to burn themselves out. Okay, and the virus was then modified to target facilities that included water treatment, power plants, and gas lines. Now you can imagine the impact that this will have. The uranium project, which is obviously their nuclear project. Okay, there's the water plants. Imagine how many people are how unsafe the water might be to drink. Right, gas lines. Compromising a gas line means you can actually effect an explosion or stage an explosion, which might kill and damage property and kill a lot of people or civilians. And then power plants, power, electricity. You must know with the load shedding. So this is what happened. This is an example of cyber warfare. An example of malware that was designed to cause damage to a nation. And that is the reason for some of the conflict you are seeing today, because fingers have been pointed about where it originated, where Stuxnet originated, who is responsible, lots of conspiracy theories, we don't know what's true and what's not, denials, and so on. And unfortunately, it has created tensions between nations. People have been killed since then. So obviously, cyber warfare gaining an advantage. Industrial espionage, right? National espionage. So we know we've got a number of security officers within a nation who are there to protect their country's interests. And they do that sometimes by doing, unscrupulous activities. And before it was, oh, we need to infiltrate this country, observe, get into this group. Now it's just we need to infiltrate the system. So someone in Asia can infiltrate a system in Cape Town. They don't even need to get a new passport or a fake passport with a fake name and so forth. They can literally do that anonymously and disappear from the face of the earth for all intents and purposes after sabotaging the infrastructure of a nation or blackmail government personnel, having citizens lose confidence in their government, and affect the citizens' faith in their government. And this can be done remotely. Now imagine if we were attacked on cyberspace and we couldn't access our power. Let's think the Iran example. We couldn't access our power, so there was no electricity. That already has people up in arms around government's failure. Then water shortages, I can promise you that would definitely result in physical altercations with government. And then imagine if we had a nuclear plant or system that is self-imploding, that already. So a combination of that would walk away and say, you know what, our government is incompetent because we've been attacked left, right, and center, and they don't seem to have the right infrastructure. And once citizens lose faith, you suffer as a nation. They might leave, or they might become more and more disgruntled, meaning the risk of a civil war or civil unrest becomes higher. It's a big deal. And if you look at it from an organizational perspective now, rather than a governmental perspective, I think one of the case studies I used to have in around 2014, 15 was where industrial espionage, it was, what was the use? It was the use of dark trace, if you've heard of a software called dark trace. And they were presenting on how at some point hackers hacked into the email server, and they accessed emails around press releases. And then they went on to blackmail the company to say, we know you have a press release for the 15th of April. Think of the SENS announcements on the JSE, which are quite strict in terms of how they should be operated. Things of announcements some companies wait to make sure that it's the right time. Timing is everything. Now, if someone accesses that information beforehand and releases it, that can have detrimental effects to even the continued existence of that company. So this is how cyber warfare has been used. In Africa, in South Africa, companies have been extorted to say, I'm doing a DDoS, a denial of service attack, a DOS, attack on your system, meaning you will not be able to access it. You will not be able to service customers. The customers will also not get access. You need to pay me a ransom. Pay me 100,000 rand in cash or transfer to this offshore account. And businesses have been paying up. Maybe some of you have been victims already. Okay, so if we look at now prevention, we have a lot of tips. So I put in a lot of tips for prevention purposes. So you'll see we've talked about email, social engineering, and internet banking, right? Is everybody okay? Can you hear me? Sorry, I'm just getting a notification that I have a poor connection. If you can just indicate on the message board that you can hear me, just say yes, I can, or yes is fine, just so I know that you can hear me. Okay, I'm not getting anything. Yvette, are you still there? Can you hear me? Okay, all right, I did get a yes. Okay, perfect. I'll continue. Right, so for prevention email hacking, you can use an OSK, so an on-screen keyboard instead of a physical keyboard, because remember, we're trying to avoid that keystroke locker. Okay, so using OSK just represents on-screen, it means on-screen keyboard. Okay, so you must see keyboards that pop up on your device or pop up, so use those instead of your physical keyboard. Okay, create a dedicated free mail address to use for risky sites. So you might think, I don't want the admin, but sometimes that admin could be the reason why you haven't lost anything or lost any personal information. as it is if someone hacks your Gmail or your personal email account. They probably will access your policies, your medical records, your children's information if you have kids. They basically will access everything. Your offers, your employment records, because your job offers come on your personal email. It will be such a big ripple. So what you want to do is you want to say, you know what, my Gmail is for all the important emails. Anything else, if I'm signing up for discounts to receive newsletters from Clicks or Discam, as an example, I'll use this particular email address. But please note, we've said risky sites, so some sites are not risky. Okay. Never use your personal email password while registering into known or unknown web portals. Everyone knows how passwords work. For some of you, you probably use the same password for log into your work laptop, log into your phone, log into your banking details. Your username is probably the same for when you go to study, for you those doing like the masters or whatever. It's probably the same. Maybe it's your the first three kids' names combined in an exclamation mark with capital letter. It can be so predictable. Especially in the older generation, you'd be very surprised how very unadventurous they are with passwords. Okay, never ever reply to spam email. Okay, if need be, if you're unsure it is spam, either Google it and call and find out if someone is who says they're from there actually works there, or even if they exist, if it's a company, but try not to reply to spam emails. Use BCC when you are sending emails to multiple people and they haven't given consent for you to share their email addresses with others. This is very common sometimes when people are being invited to an event. Someone just enters everyone's email address, but they have not granted permission for you to actually share, because you are actually exposing their personal data, which you got to other people and they didn't give consent. And that is a breach. Don't make mail to links when you are building websites. Maybe rather create text boxes that can be used to then, and that also allows a user. So if you go to text boxes, you'll then put in your email address, but you don't know to who it went to. So maybe it will go to an info button. So instead of using email info at whatever, rather use those boxes so that it forces a user to also enter a valid email address or a valid code or whatever the case might be. Don't create any easy to guess email addresses and passwords. Okay. And then with social engineering, be suspicious of unsolicited phone calls, visits, email messages. That way individuals ask about internal or personal information. I'll share with you again one of my stories, because I like the fact that I can actually have this kind of session where I can talk to my personal experiences so that you can understand it can happen to you. So I was in the market recently for a caravel type of bus. I wanted to get a little bus, 8 or 9 seater. So like a typical Hyundai H1 or caravel, something like that. And then when I was surfing the internet, obviously based on my previous searches, I was getting a lot of pop-ups from various websites on typical vans that might have come through that are available. And then a pop-up came on my Facebook where an H1 was being sold in Mpumalanga and remember, just for those who've been scammed, if it's too good to be true, it's probably not true. Okay. And what happened in that situation was this H1, a 2016 bus, was under 100,000. Now if you look it up right now, you'll see that is a deal and a half. So I obviously called them and I said I was very interested and I'd like to come and see it. And it's almost like they have a time period, because I think I called it around 11. And they asked me, where are you? I said, I'm in Joburg. And they said, oh, you're not going to make it because we're taking them to an auction. But if you pay a deposit, let's say 35,000, we'll be able to know, we won't send it to the auction. Obviously, my panic state was, oh my God, the deal is going. Then obviously the niggling part of me was saying, but why would you send it if I'm coming? You know, I said I'm coming through because I'd say to them, I'm coming through. So I called my husband, I said, let's go to Mpumalanga. It's about an hour and a half drive if I put it on maps. And now these people are calling me. Then as a way of starting, just, you know, trying them out, I said to my husband, I think you should call, but don't mention your any relation to me. Just make it seem as if you're also interested. I want to see um, if this auction story holds up. So he calls and he's told, oh, they're going to an auction by 2:30, they'll be gone, so you won't make it, sir. So then I called back, I was like, wait, I thought the auction was at 12. And they're like, no, that was the first one. We kept it for you, but it's now going. You could see they were really clutching at straws there. So we obviously turned back. And when I was Googling some more, I actually saw a message from the actual garage because these people, if you Googled, a website came up, contact details, a landline, and I actually called the landline and said, oh yes, that's one of our consultants. No, don't worry, my sister, it's not a scam. I said, oh, okay, great, I've called the landline. But it was a scam, a sophisticated one at that. Was the real garage, which is a different address, but same website design, same everything, had their post Facebook page where they were saying, please don't, we would never sell anything. We don't have access to any auctions. They had put up a whole Facebook message up on their page. So in essence, that's basically what can happen when you are about to get scammed. So unsolicited phone calls, visits, email messages, asking about internal personal information. Watch out. Be skeptical. Ask questions. If it's too good to be true, if you know you have absolutely no relations in Seychelles, don't even try your luck. If you know you have not entered the competition, how can you have won? Don't fall for those tricks. If you are greedy or if you end up being a glutton, you probably will end up also being a victim. Stay away. Okay. Do not provide personal information about the company, about yourself, unless you have verified the authority of the person who's asking and you have also obtained authority and permission to provide that personal information. Right. And before you do it on the internet, make sure that your connection is secure and make sure that the URL, the address, is correct, because now it is easy for some scammers and hackers to replicate websites, to set up an entire website with a team exactly the same as the original website, the only difference being, like I said in my other example, it's angela.makoe@w.consulting.com instead of .cosa. And you're like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And that's how you get sucked in. If you're not sure if an email is legitimate, contact. Guys, do not be lazy to pick up the phone. Phone the company, phone the person. Hi, can you verify your email address? What I have here is angela@w.consulting.com. No. My email is this. Great. Okay. Consider vulnerability testing, which is your third-party test. You bring in a W Consulting, you get them to do a vulnerability assessment, you pick up the issues, you ensure that you implement controls. And so cybersecurity audits have become the norm because it is imperative to get a second opinion on whether or not you really are resilient. A self-review thread will always be there because obviously if I design controls, I might think they're the best. But if someone else comes and tries to get in and they do, I'll realize, oh, my controls were lacking. Then with internet banking threats, try to avoid using your physical keyboard when logging into banking sites, again, to avoid keystroke logging. Go for the OTP instead of a security password. So every time you log in, you enter an OTP one-time PIN. Right. Check your connection is secure and that the URL is correct. Never respond to anonymous calls. I'm sure you've seen a lot of banks have sent messages. Please note, we are not asking, we will never ask for personal details over the phone. We will never ask you to confirm personal details over the phone. Banks have been sending those kind of emails for years. Why? Because they are aware that someone say, hi, I'm actually calling you from FNB. Because remember, they might pick up from just your internet searches that you bank with FNB. I'm calling you from FNB regarding your account. Please, can you confirm your account number with us? Yes. And please, can you confirm your ID number? Thank you. And now, can you confirm your PIN? Please enter it as soon as you hear the sound. You enter it. Next thing, the call is disconnected. Next thing, your account is wiped out. Please note, I'm not saying entering a PIN is going to be a hacking thing. Most banks will ask you security questions in security detail that ideally you would be the only person who knows. Excuse me. Change your online banking password several times throughout the year. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At least luckily now, most passwords are forcing people to have at least one, to be alphanumerical, at least one capital letter, at least a special character. Okay. Keep up with patches, which are updates, right? Keep up with patches and make sure that you maintain the latest updates, especially for antivirus software. Your antivirus is your best friend. And you should ask it to, if you know you've been surfing, you've downloaded a few things, I always say, get your antivirus to run, because it to run immediately. But sometimes it might run after at certain intervals, which means the damage will have already been done. But if you know, oh, I downloaded a PDF converter, I downloaded this app, I downloaded this app, maybe 5 apps in total that I wanted to use concurrently on my laptop, then you might end up saying, you know what, let me quickly do a virus scan to see if there's any vulnerabilities, and you run a virus scan using your antivirus. If you don't update your antivirus, the issue with that is it will only recognize the viruses that were in place at the time of the last update. Now that we've told you that hackers every day are designing new viruses, new Trojan horses, new ways of getting unauthorized access, if you don't update because again, the fighters against hackers are also updating software to pick up on those type of viruses. So that's why it's important to run the updates. So if we look at security in essentials from a summary point of view, security essentials will always look at, first of all, it's people. People are the first major essential. What type of people do you have? What do they have? The skills, competencies, roles, responsibilities. Human error accounts for a majority, almost 85% of cyber incidents. So training and awareness becomes imperative if we're going to have a behavioral change. Right. Then we have process. So with process, we are saying governance and management. How committed, what is the tone at the top when it comes to cybersecurity? If your boss doesn't care, you are likely not to care. It's as simple as that. If you're the boss and you have dismissed cyber issues, if you've been told, please stop working on a project until we run an update, and you say, you know what, your update can catch me later, I've got deadlines. Yes, we understand the show must go on. However, the show will stop completely if it is not done properly. Right. So then in terms of process, do you have audits being done, reviews of your processes, drills, security tests, monitoring? Is there a program that monitors security breaches and picks up where they have been prevented so that you can have a look and follow up in terms of building up further resilience? Measurement, which is the measurement aspect. Internal and external compliance to various bodies, various frameworks and the like, continuity and continuous improvement. So your processes are supposed to have this built in already. Then when we look at technology, we now look at what technology do we have to protect, detect, monitor the information or the security information we have at hand. What type of intelligence do we collect, as well as how can we recover if we do have an incident? What hardware and software have we put in place, including antiviruses and locks and keys, actually? What types of operations do you have in place around security? Is there a dedicated person? Or if we don't have the budget for a dedicated person, is the person, the IT guy, as we usually call them, our IT guys, are they sufficiently equipped to deal with security breaches? Have you invested by taking them to training, by ensuring that they get qualifications that allow them to understand how this works? Have you looked at next-gen products or solutions that can help your entity? Obviously, weighing the cost versus the benefit. Right. So that's just basically the essentials. So these people, process, technology, those are the three interconnected essentials when we are dealing with security. So if you need help with assessing this entire process, that's where we also come in from a W.consulting point of view. So if you look at the summary now, we've defined personal data, value of data within an organization, the impact of a security breach and what motives an attacker might have, legal and ethical issues that can face a cybersecurity professional, including the types of attackers where we talked about the white hats and so forth. And then explain the character. In the legal aspect that I spoke to was obviously some of the aspects of POPI. Remember, if you're interested in POPI, you can actually just let us know so we can run the training, because that has been promulgated and now is basically in effect. Okay, the characteristics and purpose of cyber warfare. Right. And some of the references as to where we got the information. Do we have any questions? Are there any questions or contributions? Any personal experiences? What has worked for you? I know we've got Terisha and Melinda, Shamira, Ashika. Is there anything that stands out for you, that has stood out for you from personal experiences that you might want to chat about? Are you still there? Okay. I'll take silence as happiness in this case. All right, guys, well, we've come to the end of our session. Thank you for attending, and I look forward to our next session. It's in CPD Sorted. And remember, if you have any questions, you can always send us emails, and then we can try and see how best we can assist you from an organizational point of view. Thank you very much for attending.